in your opinion, what do you think is probably the toughest region to kill a mature buck?
That's definitely the South. I mean, there's no true funnels. There's no true, wood lots, inside corners. There's nothing really to funnel them unless it's kind of man-made. It just, no doubt about it, it's the South.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Southeast Whitetail. I'm Mark Haslam, and I'm thrilled to have on the line Jeff Lindsey from the Lindsey Way. Jeff, you there?
I'm here, Mark.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I have been looking forward to this interview with you for a long time, and your unique perspective, being from the South and moving out to the Midwest, Iowa. I greatly appreciate your time.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be on it with you. I know we've been talking about this for seems like a year or two, and I'm glad we finally made it happen.
It's understandable. You probably wanted to wait to see if this podcast would make it. You didn't want to be on the early ones and see if it stayed afloat for a while.
No problem. I try to do anyone that I get asked to. My schedule allows.
I'm always tickled pink when someone that I follow and that I look up to in respect, responds and wants to do this, because I just always enjoy that. And of course, Corey, you there? My co-host Corey Parker's on the line.
Yeah, man, I'm here. I'm stoked as well, man. I've followed you for a long time, Jeff, and kind of what Mark was saying, just kind of a unique perspective, and I'm glad to be on it.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, cool. If y'all are ready, I want to jump right into this. Jeff, can you briefly kind of tell the audience, if someone's out there listening that's been living under a rock the past 10, 15 years, can you briefly tell, a little bit of backstory coming from the South and ending up in Iowa?
Right. Yeah, I can, man. I grew up hunting the South. It was, since I was old enough to walk, I was going to deer camps on the weekends with my dad, dove hunting, fishing, whatever. That led into, falling in love with deer hunting. And then sometime later on in my high school through college, I just absolutely fell in love with turkey hunting. It was the heyday of the South for turkeys. And that was my burning passion. And that kind of got me into filming. And I had a buddy that he filmed for Realtree, and we produced a bunch of hunts and videos, or filmed a bunch of hunts, I should say, and videos. And that was just kind of what we did. And then one thing led to another. We started hunting in Iowa, early 2000s, I guess. And, my dad ended up buying a farm up there, and we moved up there. This was probably, 20 years ago, I guess. And then we ended up upgrading our farm. We bought a farm over Mark Drury's old farm, kind of his original farm he had in Iowa. My dad had a couple of different pieces of land that he was able to 1031 and buy that farm in stages. And then we moved over there and have been hunting it ever since. I think that was 2007. And up until recently, I think 2020 COVID changed the world. It changed my life. Had my son starting school, and I couldn't travel as much. So I actually ended up moving back to Georgia. I still try to, I still hunt the Midwest every year. I just don't get those over-the-counter 2 tags anymore like I used to do in Iowa. So my life, my world changed on that, but I still do get to hunt Iowa. when I draw, or one of the ways I can get a tag. And that's kind of where we're at. We've been doing the Lindsey way this is going into year 8, is about to start showing on the Outdoor Channel. And it's hard to say that. It doesn't feel like we've been doing it that long. Well, what led us into that, we with Drew Outdoors Dream Season, that whole, those guys, we filmed that show for 7 years, I think. And then we went over we just kind of decided to step out on our own. That was my dad's kind of dream, his goal. And he said, I'm not getting any younger, let's do it. And we haven't looked back. And it takes a lot of time, but it's fun. And it's one of those things that's not how we make a living. I'm in construction, I build houses, have real estate companies, sell our own houses, but yes, the Lindsey way is a business that it stands alone and is profitable. But hunting comes first. The day that it becomes a job, or the day that it becomes, too much work or something that I don't enjoy, is the day I stop filming. And I'd hunt tomorrow even if I wasn't filming, or if I didn't have a camera. That's not why I'm doing it. But looking back, it has been a lot of fun to kind of capture those memories, pretty much forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's your content is some of the very few. I mean, Corey can attest to this. He'll mention, outdoor personalities to me all the time, and like I don't know who they are because I don't follow them. And you're one of the few that I follow and consume because I can relate to it, and it's real. It's real content. Okay, so we're talking about Georgia, Iowa, your land. The way you manage, I know you do land work. I know I've heard you talk about doing TSI, cutting trees, food plots. Is the main focus, has it been the main focus for wildlife, for whitetails, or and I guess I'm going with this is like my own personal family farm. The main focus really is wildlife, but it's kind of a blend, because the reason why we bought the land was for the tree farm, for the income, for growing pine trees, and that makes it sustainable. And of course, we're big time deer hunters, so that's also why we bought it. And we're able to kind of blend the two, our farm work that we lease to a farmer, our food plot, and the forestry work all kind of go together in our plan. But as y'all's land, is it really just kind of all for wildlife, or are you doing other things, farming, or growing trees, or what's your land work like?
Real similar to what you just described on yours. I mean, our farm was our Georgia farm was 921 acres originally, and it had some ag fields, and there was some hay production and a little bit of row crop that happened on it. And then I think it was about 15 years ago, we ended up adding a timber piece that was behind us, and it was, pretty much all pine trees at that point. And so about every 2 or 3 years, we will cut timber. We live in the middle of Georgia, and honestly, it's probably one of the worst timber markets in the world, just because we're not close to any good mills right there. But it does help kind of supplement what we want to do. So it's definitely probably, I wouldn't say paying for the farm, but it helps. And most all of our farming that happens now is stuff that we do. Our corn's in the ground, our beans go in the ground next week. And we have tried leasing it out to farmer, but it just doesn't work the same way like it does in the Midwest, mainly because it's a struggle, not only with the soil, but our high deer density just kind of turns more into the whatever farmers we've had before, an insurance type grab or something is the way we felt. So it's like, well, we're planting these because we want the deer to benefit, not necessarily just to collect the insurance check.
Yeah, that's something that is definitely a real thing. What do you know roughly what your densities are?
We've 40 deer square miles, kind of what when we did some studies and stuff like that 10 years ago. I'd say we're pretty close to that, maybe a little more, but I will say this is the same no matter it's the Midwest or the South. And I just kind of call it, the gamekeeper effect. You go in there and you plant all this food and you create this bedding, the TSI work, you you create all this cover, you know, your ponds, everything, and you attract all these deer. And it's like, man, we shoot more does than any of our neighbors. I know we do in Georgia, and I know we do in the Midwest, but it's just so hard to get ahead because I feel like it's a double-edged sword. All we do for the wildlife, they just keep coming. And it's like our farms know what that sustainable number is, and they're just going to keep, you know, migrating in to hold those numbers true. We've just had a hard time really taking those numbers down. Even when we say, okay, this year we're killing twice as many does. It's just something we just haven't really been able to put a dent in them, so to speak. But at the end of the day, you know, everybody likes to see deer when they go. We feel like our buck to doe ratio is healthy. It may not be 1 to 1, it may not be 1 to 2, but it's really close in both places. And we try to manage those does to keep those numbers, you know, where we're not noticing browse pressure and stuff like that on the native habitat.
Yeah, that, you know, you are spot on. And I put that in my management plans when I meet with clients about their property. It's something that I've heard Dr. Craig Harper from, you know, Tennessee talk about, but rarely does people talk about the effects of, like what you said, when you're doing all this habitat work, whatever it is, you know, or if it's all the above, you know, bedding, food, cover, safety, predator management, whatever, especially when you wrap it all together in a bundle. Well, if you keep doing that, especially if you implement QDM practices by just simply letting them walk, or as Joe Hamilton will say, just simply let them have birthdays, you know, you're going to build more deer. You're going to house more deer, and more deer utilizing your property. That's great, but you got to start shooting more. You got to start pulling the trigger more. You got to kill more does, and if you don't, you got a problem. All right, let's jump into bow hunting. And I know you do a lot of bow hunting. Core's a big bow hunter. I do it when it makes sense because I'm not that great. I'm effective, you know, but I prefer my
get it done.
I prefer my 7 mag and a good Federal 150 grain. So let's just jump right in bow hunt, all about bow hunting whitetails in the South and Midwest. I mean, Jeff, what's some just some glaring challenges? I mean, I just right off the top of my head, like, do you have preferred distances where if you're in Georgia, you're in Alabama, or you're in Iowa, is there your setups? I mean, do you want shorter distance shots in one region or the other? You know, do you have different arrowhead setups, broadheads, bullet types? I mean, is there some, I mentioned bullet but can you talk about some different just bow hunting challenges and things that you've adapted to over the years from different regions?
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging in the South. There's no doubt about it. I did grow up bow hunting, you know, whitetails. That's kind of what I did. I mean, I shot my first deer with a gun, but then that was my goal, you know, within a couple of years, shoot one with my bow, and I did. But it's a lot different. For one, our deer, you know, they're a little smaller, so you got less of a target to hit, you know. So that's going to happen. And although our deer in Iowa do jump some, you know, they'll jump the string, but nothing like a deer in the South will. They're just on edge, you know. And our farm even, you know, encompassing 1,800 acres, and most of those deer do not get high pressure by us. They may get high pressure by the neighbors, but you just feel like they're born to look up in trees. That's just what they do, you know. And we bow hunt out of ground blinds occasionally in the South, but it's just not the same. You can't conceal in the South, you know. We joke about it in the Midwest. I can put a ground blind up, and the next day I can hunt it in the Midwest. Well, I got to put that thing out like 2 or 3 months early in the South to get those deer used to it. And we'll hunt box blinds, you know, with a rifle. Out of our rednecks, we've tried over the years just slowly in every field to get a redneck, and that's really came in handy. You know, we didn't have that, nothing like that, you know, 10, 15 years ago. But now with kids and all, I can pretty much take my son or my daughter anywhere I want to hunt, regardless of the wind. But we don't bow hunt out of box blinds in the South. We may do that occasionally in the Midwest. It's just kind of not our thing, and it's not how we have our farm set up. But yeah, there's a lot more challenges. But I think, you can talk about the deer jumping, you can talk about how much smarter they are and everything, but at the end of the day, the biggest difficulty for us that we've seen bow hunting in the South versus the Midwest is just the wind. I mean, the Midwest, you know what? It's going to be out of the Northwest. That wind's going to be out of the Northwest, and pretty much until it starts changing. And then it changes, you adapt and react accordingly. But in the South, I don't care which way that wind's supposed to be blowing from, whatever the Weather Channel's saying or whatever the forecast is, it's going to blow from there, and it's going to blow from 3 or 4 other directions. And, you know, and you guys probably see it even worse than us closer to the coast over there. But I don't know if it's just because we're down there, you know, but in the corner of the United States, between the two oceans, the trade winds, whatever it is, but we just do not get, in the morning time, we'll get some consistent thermals. We will get that. But as far as the afternoon, you know, setting up, it's either going to be so dead calm with no wind that, you know, you can't even think straight because it's so calm, and you sure can't get drawn on a deer. But when the wind is blowing, it's just not consistent. And, you know, to be an effective bow hunter, you got to have a consistent wind, and you got to play that wind. And that's probably my biggest thing I would say that I've noticed is different or challenging bow hunting the Midwest versus South.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you there. I have about a little less than 400 acres, and I've actually been texting a buddy of mine who's hunting the north side of the property, and I'll be hunting the south side. I'm right there close to the coast, and just what you said, man, we'll be arguing over which way the wind's blowing. And
right, yeah, and you went to your stand, probably both of y'all went expecting the same wind.
That's right. I mean, we're only hunting, you know, a couple thousand yards away, and you know, he's got a north wind and I've got one kind of swirly west, you know, and we're just arguing over that. And it's tough.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Thinking back, me and my dad, we've definitely had that discussion. Yeah. It's supposed to be this, but no, it's blowing this way over there and not over here. But yeah, no, you see that a lot. Do you see that, Mark, I guess, on your place?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why our season opens in South Carolina in August, mid-August. And it just, you know, I mean, y'all know this being the South is that a lot of mornings, for instance, the wind doesn't get fired up until a couple of hours after daybreak. So some of those, I mean, that's why, you know, that's why I said earlier, I love bow hunting, but I only do it when it makes sense. So if I'm trying to kill a buck early season, I'm not taking my bow because you're going to educate a bunch of deer and maybe that buck before you even get close to it. So that's why I kind of drift back in the thin burn pines and climb with my rifle, just because I mean, I can't tell you how many hunts have like come together for a buck where I've like kind of like fallen into it, kind of backdoored my way in because I go to one place and the wind's doing one thing. And so I'm doing something different. So then I move locations and then I see some action and I kind of capitalize on that later, you know, in that weekend. But yeah, I mean, the wind is, that's why, I mean, I just, to me, bow hunting in the South, I'm not saying bow hunting anywhere else, but just bow hunting in general, especially in the South, is just tough. But I've kind of come to at least in my property, kind of learn like what the wind, like if you're in some thicker areas with some young pine trees, that wind's going to hit that thicket, those dense pines, and it's going to do whatever it wants to do. I mean, it's going to move around those trees like a water would, and it's just going to go through there. So it's definitely tough. Do you have any different setups as far as your bow, you know, arrow weight, broadhead, or are you using the same setup for both locations?
I don't. I use the exact same setup. I'm more of a speed guy. You know, everybody can go on the internet and get in arguments all day long with people on kinetic energy and, you know, all this type of stuff. But I'm just a speed guy. Like my bow shooting fast. I like a fast arrow, and I just like to bust through them, you know, and best I can and make them bleed. I'm an expandable guy. I have been pretty much ever since they started making them, and just had a lot of success with those. So there's really not a big difference. I will go with a little heavier arrow when I'm elk hunting, and then sometimes I'll swap back and forth a little bit, but pretty much it's an exact same setup.
Awesome. What since we're talking about bow hunting and I was talking about early season, what I know maybe it was a season or two ago, your father took down Mumbles.
Yep,
Double was it? It was a double drop time, right?
it was.
Huge buck, like peeling velvet. I remember, and you do a lot of early season hunting in the South here. What are those setups like? I mean, what do you? Because he was a morning kill, right?
It was an afternoon, but the only time he had seen him was in the morning. And
Okay.
growing up, we bow hunted in the mornings. You know, we'd go into our farm, and not necessarily this farm, you know, land we hunting club or the land we had behind our house, and you just go hunt wherever. You'd hunt your best stands, you know, where you're going to hunt in November. It was just that same 2 or 3 ladder stands. That's just where you'd go, and you'd hunt when you had that time. But as things evolved in early season, and even now, we really don't go into a good spot in the morning times in October when our season opens. But in the South, we kind of got into that rut and like, well, we're going to do more damage than good. But because of these sawtooths, we have, it's just literally changed our farm from mid to end of September. That we started planting, you know, 23 years ago, I guess, and we tried to plant some every couple of years going forward, or some type of tree. But it just holds these deer in this big 100-acre ag field that we got, and it's divided up. We have added a lot of soft edges with pine trees, and it's all at different stages, especially right now, you know, just because of the nesting and brooder and habitat that we try to maintain in there. But so those deer, these will have usually some beans and, you know, alfalfa planted in this big field at different little sections, the way it's all kind of segregated up. And then we have a handful of sawtooth acorn orchards, and those deer will just migrate to those in the afternoon, and they'll stay pretty much around those trees all night, especially if you get a little bit cooler, you know, 5 to 10 degrees cooler in the morning. And we put in this big pond, like this 25-acre pond, kind of in the middle of our property. This was about 15 years ago, I guess. And it's just created these great funnels because these deer have to walk around this pond. And so they get coming up in these ag fields, or this ag field in particular. And like I say, they'll just filter back through. And so our morning hunt now is just as good as our evening hunt. And I couldn't say that, you know, growing up. You just didn't see that unless you had a white oak acorn tree, you know, sometime in mid-October or something like that. But now, because of those sawtooth acorns, it has honestly made our morning hunting just as good as our evening hunting in the South. And I know a lot of people can't say that, but just one of those habitat improvement things that, you know, everybody has their own opinion on sawtooths, but I love them. We love them.
I love them. We planted a bunch years ago, and I tell you, it was one of the coolest hunting experience I had. It was a buck I killed in October of 2020, and actually I saw him one Friday night. Came into this bean field, and I couldn't really get a good look at him. You know, he was one of those bucks that you know got your attention as far as the antlers, but he was 250 yards away, kind of gray light, and I really couldn't get a good look. And then he moved across the field, went into the next hedgerow with a doe, popped back out, started rubbing a tree, and then he went over and hit a licking branch and a scrape under a sawtooth oak that I planted back in 2009. And I was like, damn, I was like, you know what? Like, that's pretty cool. You know, I planted that as like a little seedling tree, like a foot tall. I think I'm going to take the safety off. And then he vanished, but I was able to catch up with him. But yeah, you're right about the sawtooth oaks. And, you know, I've asked a lot of different biologists, and I've asked a lot of different land managers in the South that I respect. And, you know, because there's just been this, you know, this massive push for, you know, natives and, you know, kill all non-natives. And I get that, you know, there's a lot of real stuff that happens with, you know, different plant species that can take over that are invasive, but sawtooths aren't invasive. They're not going to take over your farm. So
Right, yeah.
I've never really understood that.
I don't, same here. I don't understand how they say that, because I've really never had any spread outside of that orchard, and they're never going to get any size to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible what they do. Well, Corey, I hope you're taking notes. Corey just recently acquired his farm, and he's got some ponds and what you were describing, Jeff. Hope you're writing all that down, Corey.
Yeah, man, I was already going to put down some sawtooth anyway after we did this timber project we're about to do. But now, yeah, I mean, obligated to now. I mean, just a preponderance of evidence. But yeah, no, that's one big thing. I think, Mark, I'll talk to you about it when you come out. But I got a couple blocks we're going to put in I hesitate to say orchard, but yeah, we'll probably put in quite a few sawtooths when we go back to plant. One question I got for you, Jeff, about the Midwest versus the South. And I know that y'all, do run pretty good surveys and kind of know your deer for the most part. And I lived in Oklahoma for a little while and hunted out there, which is not Midwest, but definitely not the South either. How many of your bucks would you say you have on camera versus just kind of surprised, like you didn't know they were there, if you're kind of compare the Midwest versus South? I mean, I know, at least in my experience, I'll get a fair amount of deer on camera, but every year, man, I'm seeing, it doesn't matter what property I'm hunting, any property I know well, I'm seeing deer in the South that, where the hell did that come from? And I had no idea what that was. Right. And there's this idea that you can get all your deer on camera, and I just don't, that's not been my experience. What, you got any take on that?
I would say both of them are real similar. We run a ton of cameras, probably too many. And I will say that to a fault, just because I feel like the last couple of years I have really kind of not, I haven't stepped back. I have stepped back personally on cameras a little bit, just where I don't let them like dominate my life. Now my dad's gotten where he's starting to do them a little bit more. Just, it was always my thing. I put out the cameras, I checked all the cards, and we figured up, one day of how many millions of images, I was clicking through every year, and I felt like that's all I'd done. And I really got burnt out on it. And not so much in Georgia, but mainly in Iowa, just because we were running, 60, 80 cameras and run through the summer, and kind of the same thing in the South. We don't run as many cameras per acre in the South as we do in the Midwest. Probably more so just we don't spend as much time. I don't want to say that, because we do spend as much time hunting there, I guess. But, we're hoping, to find that magical, 180, 190-inch deer in the Midwest, and in the South, you're just looking for something mature. So I guess you got a little more carrot hanging out in front of you to try to find that next giant in Iowa. But occasionally, like last year, I've seen this buck come out, and he was one of those. He was a cool buck. He was old. This was late October. He's dead on this doe, and I was like, I almost let my camera guy shoot him, just because I'm like, I don't know him, but I know he's old, and that wasn't what deer I was after, and he ended up getting away from us. But I was like, man, what deer is that? I don't know. I don't know what deer this is. But then when I went back and I had some pics of him, so usually I feel like now I can say that I see more deer that I didn't know before. But that's probably because my memory doesn't remember shooting them ever since or getting pics of them. It's just one of those deals of crossing 40. Not as good as it used to be, because I always had this photographic memory going up. If I seen a deer once, felt like I would remember that deer for several years, no matter how much he changed. I could remember him year to year just based off his frame. And that's just, unfortunately, that's not the case with my brain anymore.
Yeah, I can side with that for sure.
But I guess to summarize that, it doesn't happen as often, I guess, as I would like, but I think that's because we run so many cameras.
So y'all, Iowa's a 2-buck state. Is that correct?
It's a 2-buck state for resident. And if you're a landowner, I think that's, 40, 60 acres, whatever it is, get them confused with Illinois and Kansas. Then you can get a third tag,
Okay.
And there's different ways you can get tags with you got better odds with muzzleloader. And then, a lot of people do the party hunting on the gun seasons in early December. So there's a lot of different ways to get tags, but most people are trying to get that bow tag, to hunt one of the southern Iowa zones, and that's taken 4 or 5 years to get drawn, which is crazy, but that's what makes it so good.
So I want to move in next, talk a little bit about hunting culture. A lot what I cover on Southeast Whitetail on this podcast and articles I write and stuff I post is just really just celebrating the hunting culture of the South. Because, not that it's any bit better than any other region, but it's just different, it's just different. And I wanted to show it. So reason why I went in that right now is that you had talked about if Iowa is a generally a $2 state, maybe you can get another one as a landowner. You're probably not seeing deer managers like yourself, land stewards, hunters taking out a quote management buck, whether some people feel that, they can call out genetics, which, has been hypothesized for years, but has been, tested by researchers and biologists that does not work in a wild deer perspective. But there is something that you can do as far as essentially culling out mouths on the landscape. You've got X amount of deer, and if you kill some of them, you've got less, obviously, and so the other ones will grow better, and you'll create more fawns and a lot of stuff like that. So that can't be a thing out there, right? If people, do people take those, buck tags and maybe take out less inferior bucks like the other ones, or is that just not a thing out there?
No, usually if they do, it's by accident. That's just not, that was kind of my thing back when I would get 2 or 3 tags. I would always say, man, every year I'm going to shoot a management type deer. But that's me. That's one thing I try to teach my son, and anybody that hunts with me knows is if that's an old deer, that's really all I care about. Yes, I want to kill, as big a deer as anybody. That's the human nature. But I've always said, just try to kill the oldest deer on the farm. You kill the oldest deer on your farm, you're always going to be happy about that. But you go and shoot, a young or a 3-year-old that may score good, but you knew what he could be down the road. It's just going to, stuff like that. It's going to mess with your brain or mess with you, and you're never going to regret shooting that old deer. So that's just kind of what I do. Everybody's different, but these people that are drawing one tag every 4 or 5 years. I get it. I understand. Landowner in Kansas, I get 1 buck, and my deer density out there on our farm, a farm on the Arkansas River, there is as high as anywhere I hunt. And every year, rifle season, I have 3 or 4 buddies. Well, 2 of them didn't get drawn this year. We take the same group of 4 or 5 people. They didn't get drawn, but I'm like, come out here, guys. We're going to shoot an old deer. If it's an old big one, I don't care, but we're going to kill some old deer because I cannot, by only killing 1 tag, we can't manage that. And I do agree, kind of with the science on that you can't really, cull genes out, stuff like that. But my theory is if it's an old deer, well, he's taking up space, not only from a food perspective, but for whatever reason, you get those 6, 7, 8-year-old bucks. I don't care if that's one thing that is consistent. It doesn't matter if it's Midwest, Texas, the South, but you get that old 7-pointer with 3 or 4 inch tines, he's going to be the baddest buck in that clover field, or wherever you're hunting, and he's going to run all these other little deer off. And my thought is, well, don't go getting in a fight and hurting this up and coming, stud 3-year-old, or don't go running this 4-year-old off to my neighbor because he don't want to be stressed out by you all the time. So that's my theory. Well, just first chance you get them, I say take them.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't. I'm not a management buck kind of person. We usually just try to hammer the does pretty hard. So with that being said, does, is there much of a cultural hunting difference, of hunters killing does in the South versus the Midwest? Here in the South, there's some, of course the densities vary, but there's some pockets throughout the Southeast that have, where I am, and I've known this with our QDM records for 18 years, but I really couldn't say it out loud without people probably thinking I had lost my mind until Clemson University did a spotlight. They've been doing spotlight surveys in my part of the county, my particular county, and we're, the low end's 169, the high end's 229 per square mile. So, we've got it up there. Killing does in the South, it's like people either on board or they're not. You know,
it's a lot of work
out there in the Midwest. Is that the kind of thing, or is it? I mean, is it? Because I mean, you know, there's such a very rich and strong, as well as there should be, buck culture, because y'all are doing something right out there with growing big bucks, and you've got a very healthy age structure of bucks. So how does that doe? I mean, like for instance, I've been a little bit about people not shooting does because I'm doing cleanup work personally, because I've got some neighbors, one in particular that has access right on top of me, 800 acres, and they don't shoot any does. So I've got people like Corey coming over to, you know, shoot 4 or 5 at a time out of a bean field, which he has, to try to balance that. I mean, are the does a big thing? And if so, like, when do y'all try to really target these does? Throughout is it just throughout the season, early, late?
Yeah, and you know, going back to what you said about the culture in the Midwest is exactly what you said. Some people are into it, some people aren't, and that is what you see in the Midwest as well. And I think at the end of the day, and we're talking about shooting does, and we're not talking about, and I'm sure this is what you guys are talking about. I'm not talking about, hey, I'm gonna fill the freezer, I'm gonna go get one ground up, then I'm gonna go get one cut up with some chopped steak.
Yeah,
it's not that. It's like using every tag you can get your hands on, plus you're getting your kids to come out shoot, getting your family, your friends, you know, really taking a dent in them. And when you start talking about that, me and Dave talk about this all the time, is that is a ton of work. You know, yes, they're fun to shoot, and then you got to load them up. Our Georgia location, we're very lucky. You know, there's a ton of processors in the South. We're not that lucky in the Midwest. So and if we shoot a deer, we got to throw it in the cooler. Or most of the time, we just clean them ourselves and process them ourselves in the early season. But in the Midwest, we do not start shooting does until, you know, late season, pretty much when all the buck tags are filled. Because then we're going, you know, we'll use guns. They just started to bring back the rifle season in the Midwest or in Iowa 2 years ago, which that's how we shot all our does. We'd shoot 100 does in a weekend, you know, with a handful of us with the rifle tags, and we'll shoot some along the way, you know, in October or in Georgia in September. That's kind of what we feel like we're getting in the groove, getting dialed up for the rut. But we don't do that. We're not those people that goes and says, hey, we're going to shoot all our does before the rut. Now, the biologist on our Mississippi farm, Magna Vista out there, where we hunt on the river out there, and that deer density out there is through the roof. But he wants us to shoot all the does before the rut. And I understand why. And I do think there's definitely some validity to that, and definitely some pros to do it. But our thought is, I just like to keep those deer in there. I don't believe in, hey, I need to save these does for the rut. I don't believe in that, because at the end of the day, I want less does, so those bucks got to search more. But that just, like we were talking about earlier, it's hard to get to that level. But we just shoot them towards the end of the season. And Thanksgiving's kind of our time in Georgia. We like to, because our season in Georgia runs through 1st of September through January 10th. So if we can, you know, hunt that week of Thanksgiving, you know, maybe start shooting some does in some of our non-popular spots. But that 1st of December is really good for us for bucks. So if we don't have if we got a buck we're still after, we'll hunt then. But usually we try to allow a month of hunting, which may give us, honestly, you know, 6, 8, 10 sits, just how busy we are, you know, getting some people in to try to get those numbers down.
Yeah, like you're spot on. It's a lot of work. I mean, Corey knows this. I've been doing some, like, you know, little kind of fun doe invitational tournaments at our farm late September to try to hammer them. And it's just, I mean, we don't really have a set goal, because we're just trying to, it sounds bad, we're just trying to kill as many as we can. I had a very good land manager biologist tell me years ago, and it didn't really resonate until after we had our farm for a handful of years. But he said, Mark, you know, go in there and shoot every doe you can, and then shoot 20 more. And it's just, and I, you know, another really good example that I think it was on the NDA Deer Steward 1 course. They talked about, you know, different reasons for shooting does early and late. And another good reason to shoot them early is because, you know, does, deer in general consume about 5 to 6 pounds of their body weight every single day. So let's just take, you got a 100-pound doe, that's 6-8 pounds a day. And if you shoot them early season or late season, do the math. If you're trying to shoot 10 or 20, I mean, that's a lot of poundage that,
It is.
that deer is going to consume in your forest or your food plots that you're just going to kill them. And they're eating all that good protein, whatever you planted or you burned or you dissed, and you're just going to kill them. So kill them early and let the other deer eat on it. But, it's one of those things where it'll, like you said, it ultimately comes down to the hunter, and they know the land and, for what they need to do for the does. Are there
guys rut there?
Corey starts a little bit earlier, right, Corey?
Yeah, mine's, you're in Georgia. So down here, my peak chasing, I guess would be, right there around muzzleloader season, right here on the coast. And then it kind of tapers off from that. So I'd probably say, what's our rifle season usually? October 17th, somewhere in there. Yeah, right in there. And then by the time November comes, you're kind of getting in more into a secondary rut down this part of the world.
Right.
From what I've seen down as close to the coast as we are. You go a little bit in where I used to hunt towards, Bullitt County, and it's a little bit later, but pretty early down this part of the world.
I've been using the fawn fetus, or not the fawn, the fetus scale. In December, and all the back dating goes from about the 27th of October to about the 31st of when they're bred. Some of them will go into November, but we have our rut really gets started that third week, that third week in October is really when the bucks are on the feet moving. And then, but with our densities, we have so many does that don't get bred their first cycle. Then they're going to cycle back in. And then we also have a lot of fawns. Our fawns, I mean, they have reached 60 pounds by Thanksgiving. So we've got fawn does that are hitting the first heat cycle during when the adult does that weren't bred the first time are hitting their second heat cycle. So, that's when I think in those type of areas, sometimes hunters get a little confused as far as when they're, but unless someone's keeping track of their records or using that fetus scale, it's really hard for someone to pinpoint. I mean, like I couldn't pinpoint.
You're just guessing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, guessing because you're going to see all kinds of things in the woods. But that's
right. No, I agree with that. And what do you think? And I knew you said you shoot yours early. So you try to shoot yours before the rut, correct?
Yes, correct. I mean, well, we put a big dent in them, and then it gives us some breathing room so we can hunt some bucks, and then we're just kind of keep shooting does all the way to the end.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's similar to us. We don't shoot. We shoot a few kind of. I say similar. We're kind of a little backwards on that. We shoot a few starting out, and then we really hammer them late. And I wish we could, but we kind of just have to really wait on the rifle season and what works for us, because when it opens in mid-October rifle season through November, we're hunting the Midwest. We're just not hunting there, so it just doesn't allow us. And man, killing multiple does with bows can be done, but it's just next level management. It's just hard to do, hard to get your numbers.
It is. I mean, right. Anyone regulating does with archer equipment, hats off to them. I mean, I talk about shooting does, but I mean, I'm thankful that we can start hunting them with a rifle in the lower half of South Carolina, August 15th. There's no early archery in the lower half of South Carolina. And that's mostly for the number of deer we have. But I mean, if we had early archery, that would be insanely tough. Are there any other, kind of hunting cultural differences you can think of? I mean, I know in the South, like, the skinning shed, for instance, is just such a It's like a big part of the, hunting culture down here, hunt clubs and skin sheds and meeting up afterwards. And, or maybe it's a deer processor or different things like that. I mean, you probably not seeing many are there many hunt clubs out there or anything different that you can see that
No,
you can
there's
see?
almost zero hunt clubs in Iowa. There may be 2 or 3 guys that may, lease 300 acres or something like that. But no, you do not see the hunt clubs. You see the occasional skin and rack or something, but it's just different because, when we first started going to Iowa, 20, 25 years ago, there was hardly anyone bow hunting. It just didn't happen. Those people were raised on, they got a week long, then they got a 10-day rifle season December, and everybody waited till then and hunted. That's when they went and got their buck, and they were going from, woodlot to woodlot, and they were driving them. That is what they did. And hey, don't get me wrong, that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
We used to drive deer in Georgia, back in the day, end of the season. We'd do that. And now looking back, thinking about, the deer had been hammered all year, and what little few deer were left, we're going to go run them out of their beds with, making all kind of noise, stressing them out, and then shooting at them on the run, and that's how I think as hunters and managers, we evolve, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, because a lot of guys in Iowa, that is their culture. They still do that. But I do think you can look at not only hunting, but life in general. A lot of things humans do, and they learn and they get better and they evolve and do stuff that maybe makes a little more sense than it used to, or don't do the stuff that didn't make sense. So that's a big culture there. But yeah, it's funny you talk about hunting clubs up there. You do not see that. They definitely have their cultures, but most of those center around that gun season, and I do miss that hunting club aspect. Yes, you're not going to maybe get the deer the age on a piece of land when it's got 20, 30 people hunting. At the hunting club I grew up in, we had 30 or 35 members on 900 acres, and that was how I pretty much grew up hunting. And we'd go there, everybody brought their camper, and I miss that camaraderie. That's why I enjoy what we do in Illinois. We invite a lot of people to hunt the farm over there. We invite people to hunt in Kansas, so we get that on a smaller scale, and it may only be 4, 5, 6 people in the woods, but you're still coming back, swapping hunting stories. It kind of helps keep us going too. I like seeing somebody seeing big deer, seeing deer in the Midwest for the first time, watching that through their eyes, just because it's easy to get burnt out. Because we're going hard from September to end of January. So I look forward to those hunts probably more than any of the other ones. And I'm not saying I don't enjoy hunting myself or hunting with my dad, but getting other people involved really kind of just stokes the fire for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a big part of what we do, is just having friends and family up and clients and whoever else. Even as one of my friends that wants to get into hunting for sure. So, I like that.
That it's got to be hard to find a Georgia ball game on the radio out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You ain't gonna see that up here. I guess now with the internet and all, you can stream whatever you want. But it's Saturdays in the South, man. It's deer hunting and college football. It's just it's always what happens.
Always a conundrum, man. Georgia plays Florida right there that first week in November, last week in October, 3:30 in the afternoon. It's tough.
So are you a Hawkeyes fan now since Iowa?
Well, honestly, I've always been just kind of an SEC fan. I do like the Hawkeyes. I'll pull for them, but I've never been diehard. But I live in Bulldog country, so I'm, at the end of the day, I'm always going to root for them, especially because I got so many buddies that are either Tennessee or Bama or Auburn fans, and so it's been a good little run here the last handful of years since Kirby Smart's been on board. So I guess that I wouldn't say I'm any more of a fan now, but I do a lot more talking now than I used to, because it's easy.
You should out there.
These are heady times for Bulldog Nation, I can promise.
Let them know where you came from. That's right. All right, let's kind of move towards wrapping this up. I've got some rapid fire questions, Jeff, if you're ready. if you don't feel like answering one, you can pass. No worries. I know you post a lot about snacks for racks. What is your favorite Little Debbie? You can only take one. Let's say you're going to be hunting for a long time in the rut. What's your go-to?
Yes, OCP, man, oatmeal cream pie, no doubt about it. It's always going to be one in my pack. It may not be in one piece, but it's going to be one in my pack.
I was like, I think it was last year, I was shopping at this like local grocery store where I hunt, and they had the they had the Christmas Little Debbie's out, but it was like September, early October, and so I was like, yeah, I looked at the date, and it was clearly had been from like the previous year or two. They just, I guess, had stock, and they put it. Of course, I still bought them, and we still ate them that weekend. But I mean, how could you not buy them? I guess it was the Christmas tree,
first one to see.
But it was just like, what are they doing here?
Well, that throws my whole theory off, because I'm usually like, hey, when those things are on the shelf, that's when the deer are in rut. Well, if you're getting them in September, October, it's not going to work.
Hey, man, that holds true then. You know,
that's throwing the science off here.
Yeah,
we'll get NDA to do a research project on that. You know, when they put up the
right, yeah, when they hit the shelves.
Yeah. So, hunting media. What do you? How has hunting media, do you think, has changed in the past 20 years?
Oh man, night and day.
Yeah,
it's night and day. I mean, to a lot of good info out there, but there's also a lot of time wasting out there. So
yeah. That's kind of my take. It's like there's so much great. I mean, it used to be like you had to subscribe to magazines or certain TV shows or videos, but nowadays, like, there's a lot of legit biologists and people that are real. I mean, that know their stuff, and they're putting free content out there. But there's a lot of people that are putting content out there that's really not. It's extremely misleading, I should say, to put it lightly.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody wants to know, wants credibility, and how do you get credibility? You got to sound like you know what you're talking about. So there's people trying to sound like they know what they're talking about, whether it's right or wrong. There's a lot of bad advice for as many smart people out there like yourself. There's going to be probably 2 or 3 that's just spewing their own opinion or whatever Grandpa taught them, and is that really what's best for the whitetail or the turkey population? That's a big deal. But the turkeys is a big lightning rod right now, because people are looking for answers.
Turkeys. Yeah. What you bring up turkeys? I mean, what are y'all? I mean, the turkey issues in the Southeast are pretty. I mean, there's some landowners that have a ton of turkeys and they can't beat them off with a stick. And those are kind of, pockets here and there, but most of them are dealing with the same stuff that if you follow like Mike Chamberlain, different people, Wild Turkey Science podcast that people know about. Are y'all dealing with anything like that? Any of these kind of issues out in the Midwest?
Overall, yes, we are. We hear it. But as far as our Iowa farm, it's the good old days. It's as good as I've ever seen it. It's got as many turkeys as anywhere you could expect, just big Easterns, bunches of them. But our habitat there, we got a lot of CRP grass. We got, everything we do for the deer, those turkeys kind of benefit off of it. So our farm in Iowa is loaded with turkeys. Gotcha.
Okay. Here's a rapid fire question. In your opinion, what is, if you're trying to, if a hunter is trying to kill a mature buck, for their particular region, what do you think is, okay, mature buck for that region, natural movement, meaning they really do their homework, they're scouting, they understand bedding, they understand where they're going to feed, they understand how and when they're going to move, meaning they're not sitting on a feeder, maybe they're not sitting on an ag field or ag field or food plot. In your opinion, what do you think is probably the toughest region to kill a mature buck?
That's definitely the South. I mean, there's no true funnels. There's no true, wood lots, inside corners. There's nothing really to funnel them unless it's kind of man-made. It just, no doubt about it, it's the South.
Yeah. And I guess I am biased, but that's my opinion. But I almost feel, I can't think of the right word, but like Corey knows from like hunting my property, but like, I grew up in a hunt club, very similar to what you were talking about. I mean, it's kind of every man for themselves, and people are kind of talking about what they see, but everyone's not really sharing what they really see, kind of deal. But we kind of fell into a situation where we started to checkerboard our pine stands and really have some, some varying habitats. And by doing that, and when you do it and we design it the right way, you can't create funnels and pinch points and just, it's not gimmies, but you can be able to really hunt deer on their natural movements, going to destination food plots and whatnot. But it's, it's still certainly difficult. Kids.
And that
sorry, go ahead.
Scenario. Yeah. That type of scenario. And that's why you're probably so successful. You're doing things that are not only making your habitat better, but if you keep in mind the huntability aspect of it too, which obviously you are, it's going to make you more successful for sure. Yeah. I guess when you just think of like a hunting club, hey man, me and 20 of my college roommates are in this hunting club down in South Georgia, and it's 800 or 1,000 acres, and it's timberland. Well, you know what? It's either going to be 100% pine trees or it's going to be 100% clear cut, because depending on what stage they're at. So, and then that's when it gets tough, just real tough.
I know. It's when someone's wall to wall, like you said, border to border, the same age class and whatever. That's why, like, I always, whether someone's just trying to bend my ear or if they engage with me to help them with their land, I would try to tell them. And that's why, like, I've been putting so many videos out about forestry work that, listen, I mean, I was in the same boat. I was hesitant on clear cuts. I was hesitant cutting trees, but it's one of the best things you can do, because you're going to make money, but then you can create deer habitat, kind of where you want them to bed, where you want them to feed, and so forth. I mean, it's a way of really
clear cuts are.
Yeah.
I still think clear cuts are overlooked. We're not clear cutting hardwoods or, generational trees, nothing like that. But just on pine trees, man, that is, a lot of people frown on it. Oh, they took all the trees down. Like, you're about to have the bed and cover of the century right here. So yeah, I still think it's one of those things. That's what we tried to do, a little bit. It may only be 5 acres here or there, but a 5-acre clear cut is a ton of bedding. But you got to get out of that mentality, that I had growing up, and just start thinking overall.
Yeah, I like that. Let's switch here into kids. If anyone follows you, you do an awesome job bringing your kids out there. I think it was Cash, your son, shot a huge buck last year, right? I've been taking my 3-year-old boy back before. My girl's about to turn 7. They've been going with me. My son, my 3-year-old son, he was with me I probably shot 3 or 4 does with him last year in the stand. Corey's taking his son. They shot a doe at my place and a turkey this year. My son's just latched onto it. I mean, I woke him up at like 4:00 one morning to drive the farm to go turkey hunting. He just shot up. I tapped him. He just shot up and he said, "Let's go." So I'm almost think I'm creating a monster. Like, he wants to go turkey hunting now, and I'm trying to explain to him it's not turkey season. I mean, we can do it, but it's a big gamble, with the law. I'm kidding. But do you have any kind of suggestions with hunting with kids, do's and don'ts? Or are you just out there? Because I'm out there winging it, I mean, as a father, and just trying to get them involved, not to push them. I'm not trying to duct tape, a gun in their hand. I want them to go about it the right way. But I tell you, it's so much fun bringing them out there.
It is. It really is. I don't know, man. I feel like I'll be able to write a pretty dang good book on this, in about 10, 15 years once my kids get up and going. But, it's so much different than baseball or when you start your kid with football or anything. But my thing is, if they have an interest, want to go, let them do it. And my son shot his first turkey when he was 4, and first deer when he was
nice.
5, and and people say, oh, that's too young. I'm like, well, man, that's all he knew. That's all he wanted to do. He's 8 years old now, and honestly, I can say, out to a couple hundred yards, he's probably a better shot than me, because anytime we're sighting in rifles, he's always a little closer to the bullseye. And I can say that, I can take that, with a little humility. But he was just ready. That's what he lived for, And he doesn't get on. He doesn't. If he plays a video game, it's not some, any crazy things. And I don't let him have video games much, but it's a hunting game. It's a hunting game. That's what he does. If he's watching a YouTube channel, it's a hunting show, or somebody, bow fishing. Or that's all he really cares about. So it's a little bit different deal with him, and it's like it's a lifestyle, kind of going back to how I told you when I got started. We went to deer camp on the weekends, 6-8 weekends a year, or however many times I was lucky enough to get to go. But now, because of the year-round process and the management and the gamekeeping and all that, that's all he knows is kind of a lifestyle of deer and all that. So, but I also want him to work his way up, and he has with bucks. He shot some nice deer. He has not shot any of our real true top-end deer yet. And not that I would tell him not to shoot, but I want him to earn it, but I want him to respect it. And but he likes to pull the trigger. I mean, he just does, and that's what, and I think that's what keeps it fun. I had a buddy in Mississippi, and all he wants to do is duck hunt. And he says, my dad raised me, took me deer hunting, took me duck hunting, but you know what? He never would let me shoot a deer. And but every time I went duck hunting, I got to pull the trigger. So that's why. And he was kind of joking there with his dad was in the room, and just kind of blaming it on him. I was like, man, that kind of hits home, So you got to make it fun. And I try to get him to shoot old deer. Now, I'm never gonna, talk him out of shooting some prize, 3 or 4 year old, if that's kind of what he wants to do. And it makes sense, we'll do it to a point, because I'm like, you only get one deer, here or there. And I don't know. I'm just going back to, one day I'll be able to write a book. I've struggled with a lot of things with him that I don't know anybody to talk to get answers, because I don't want to spoil him. But then again, when I take him hunting, I don't want to go hunt some spot that sucks just to try to prove a point, because that's what I got to do too, So it's a little different with him than it probably will be with my girls, just because he lives it so much. But we had a life lesson last year. He shot it was a 4-year-old buck in Missouri, and he was a 135-inch 8-pointer, but he come out, he was pumped to get him. Well, he was a solid deer, big body. And then later in the season, he shot a deer that was a 5 or 6-year-old 8-point in Georgia, and it was 120 inches. But when he just wanted to pull the trigger, and it was a deer that needed to be shot. And when he shot it, he's like, that deer's a lot. That was a little deer, or small. He started making some comments like that, and kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, well, you're taking the life of an animal, and we got to work through all this. So, man, I was seeking for answers last year, dealing with that. I kind of have to. It's like every year I'm having to put him on, not the bench for a little bit, but I'm like, hey, if you want to go hunting, you're gonna have to go and just watch me shoot. You're gonna have to learn it, or you're not gonna get to shoot this time. And fine line between letting them pull the trigger too, and then how much is too much to respect life. So I said all that to basically tell you I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, no.
I'm always looking for answers. I'm always looking for answers trying to raise kids.
That's spot on, Jeff, because what worked. It's out with anything in life. Like you can take like a land management. What you're doing on your Georgia farm might not work for Corey or my place in South Carolina. So, and same thing with kids. I can't speak for Corey's kids, but mine, mine wants to get, both of them want to go. My son wants to start shooting now, but he's only 3, so he doesn't understand that at all. He just has a toy gun and wants to shoot the toy gun that makes sounds.
Yeah, I remember seeing those posts. Yeah,
my daughter is about to be 7 and tomorrow. And so she still likes to go, but she likes to go now because because like I'll bring an iPad for her, or like we'll stop and buy some candy. But when it comes down to actually shooting and killing the deer that I'm going to do, she's a little hesitant now. And then we've got a skinning shed at our farm. So that was a whole different element where, we kill a deer and we're dragging it back. I mean, it's one thing you're sitting in stand, you pull the trigger, but then you got to go
Right.
walk up, you got to find it, you got to drag it, load it up, and then you're at the skinning shed. And that's like a whole different ball game that, you can't hide anything there. I mean, it's all or nothing.
It gets real quick.
Yeah, it gets real quick with adults. I mean, Corey can testify to that. I mean, there's some grown men that just can't, they literally can't stomach being there, or at least helping out,
Yeah, they'll go get you a beer or something while you're cleaning a deer. They're good for that. But,
Yeah.
I mean, along those lines, Mark, I mean, that time we went last year, I think was when you took Wells and I had Shepherd with me, and I shot that doe. That was a big talking point for us. Do we go, 3-year-old, both of them were 3 at the point, and it was, do we put them in it? And yeah, we had to. So I was really pleased to watch Shepherd and Wells kind of, just play around the skinning shed, and while we were cleaning that deer, and they were kind of, they gave it the right amount of, they kind of put them back a little bit, but they kind of got over that pretty quick. And my son, he's all about it. I mean, he was mad when he didn't get to kill that deer, and the same kind of thing you were talking about, Jeff. Like, he just wanted to kind of earn it and have an appreciation for it. So with us, I mean, as we're kind of getting into starting the farm, starting the land management side of it, I try to take him every bit I can to, work on the tractor. As we're out in the woods, kind of looking at old rubs or whatnot, and kind of bring him into part of the process. So when the time comes, when he is old enough to pull the trigger, for him to have an appreciation as much as he can at his young age, of what kind of went into it, and how, kind of we didn't just go out there and kill a deer. And I'm a big fan of that. I think people should take kids whenever they can, but get them involved in the process. And I know you do a great job of that. I follow you on social media and what you do on TV, and I know, Mark, you do too. And that's something I've really tried to bring my kids into as much as I can. Their little legs, it kind of makes it tough on them, but the full year-round.
Yeah, my son, he'll frown on that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm done.
No, I was just saying, my son, frown. Hey, let's go. It'll be summertime. Hey, man, we got to go. Put up, move some cameras around. No, I don't really want. I'm like, look, you want to go shoot in the fall, you got to. But they, even since they were old enough to walk, even before they were old enough to walk, a family deal, especially when we shoot a big buck, we always try to recover it. That doesn't matter if we're in Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, wherever. If you shoot a big deer, you get everybody together, and then you go do the blood trail. And then that's kind of what they learn and love, and everybody likes that. But my little girl, she's 6, and she, last couple of years I would have let her shoot a deer. But she's really got no desire. If she goes hunting, hey, I want to, bring some snacks. And before I even get the door shut on the redneck, she's telling me she's hungry, and that's just what she likes doing. But she's got really no interest in it yet. Now my 2-year-old, and both of my girls are daddy's girls, but I think my 2-year-old will have a little more interest in it, and maybe my 6-year-old will pick it up. But I'm definitely not going to force it on her. She's definitely more of a girly girl, and my little one's more of a tomboy. So, but man, there's just no book to read, or really no podcast you can listen to learn and get better at parenting. Raising a kid in the deer woods. It's just so many curveballs you get thrown at you.
That's right. One curveball I've been thinking about is when you're describing your oldest daughter. That sounds like my daughter too. I mean, she likes to go. She likes to do stuff with me, and she likes to go. But I don't see her, unless something changes, wanting to kill a deer down the road. But I know what's going to happen. A couple of years down the road, she's going to be in high school or dating somebody, and that boyfriend might want to hunt
Yeah.
And then Gwen's going to be talking to me about, some jackass that's just dated my daughter, wants to go hunting. And then what am I supposed to do, Corey and Jeff? Am I supposed to put them in the best stand, or am I supposed to put them on the highway and then call the warden and tell him I got some guy poaching and tell him I got some guy poaching my line?
As one of those jackasses once upon a time, I would say take it.
Yeah, that's good. I guess it's a good way to learn if you're gonna like it or not.
Yeah, that was me. I will say my daughter now, she's the same age as y'all's, and she very much equates whatever I bring home. If I'm going hunting, she equates that to being able to, we're having deer steak or whatnot. She loves, that youngin loves wild game. Duck, man, she loves duck. She likes to, pet their feathers and everything, but she very much equates it to that. Now, she doesn't care anything more about killing one, but she wants me to go kill one or whatever so we can eat, deer steak or duck steak or, have something with a turkey or something like that. But, she doesn't care anything in the world about going to kill one. She's very much a girly girl, but my son, it'll be a lot of fun, as they get older.
Like to eat them. Well, that's a good segue. Jeff, I'm going to wrap this up with 3 questions that I ask every guest. And Corey brings up a good one, wild game. Do you have a preferred wild game dish recipe that is just like your go-to favorite? It doesn't have to be elaborate, but just something that you just maybe you've been on the road for a couple of weeks and been forced to eat out. You're finally home. Maybe got your family there. Is there something that you just a preferred dish?
Yeah, that'd be what we call country fried or chicken fried deer steak. Cast iron skillet with it's tenderloin of the rump that's been cubed up, and we put a little Tony's on it, and just fried up. And we don't do a lot of fried. We don't hardly fry anything really to ever eat at the house, but deer steak's one of those, and we try to have that if we have some, especially in deer and hunting season. Once every 3 or 4 weeks. That is just everybody's go-to dish. But it's always going to have the same thing. It's going to have green beans and mashed potatoes. We don't cook it unless we cook it like that. So if we got a special guest over or something, we'll do it. But that's my death row meal.
I like that. Well, yeah. There might be some people out there listening that maybe you had as a guest that didn't have that, and they're probably thinking they weren't special enough to get that.
Or no, we didn't have. We may not have had it. And usually I try to keep it pretty fresh. We got to have a doe on the ground or something where I can go out there and cube it up.
So do you use a wet batter? So it's like, I'm sorry, what's your batter mixture when you go to fry? Do you have a wet batter?
Flour. So just dry all-purpose flour, and then just olive oil or avocado oil, whatever, in the pan, and so it's a dry batter for sure.
Gotcha.
It's just one of those that's been kind of, my wife and mom have just tweaked it over the years, and now when I talk about cube meat, I'm talking about it's thin. It's thin cut, quarter inch probably, maybe a half on some of it. I don't even know if I'd go a half. I'd probably say a quarter to a third, and then we run it through the cuber twice, and so it's cut it with a fork tender.
I guess I lied. I told you I have 3 questions, but I just thought of one more. Processors. Is there a noticeable difference as far as like what they offer, in the South and Midwest as far as venison processors? Or are they pretty much the same?
No, yeah, definitely.
I have heard.
In the Midwest, they do crazy stuff. So I got to get some deer processed in the Midwest to bring it home if I want. Like Milo's Locker, who we give them, 50 to 100 deer a year, and they were able to. Iowa has a great program, where the hunters donate for the hungry and stuff like that, the Hush program. But we'll keep a few of them for ourselves, as much as our freezers will handle. But any type of deer stick you want, or summer sausage, you just about dream it up, and they can do it. And it's not like that in the South. It's just at least ours aren't.
I was hunting with a guy from Minnesota this past season. He was a camera guy, really fun guy to hunt with, Hunter Rudd. And he was he was loving, we had some sausage. It was, what is it, Corey? It's, I think it's called Sweet Heat or something like that from a Great
Habanero mango you
Outdoors.
got?
Yeah. Habanero
Yeah.
mango. And it's
Oh,
just a
that's
good, perfect mixture of like a sweet heat, you know, but anyways, he was saying that up in Minnesota, they just don't really get a whole lot like jalapeno type stuff up there in processors. Like down here, man, you can get jalapenos and whatever you want to, just any kind of mixtures, but it's a little more bland as far as the flavorings they offer up there. But you know, that's Minnesota. I can't speak for that. All right, second question. Do you have, I usually ask people if they have like a book or like a media content recommendation of someone's maybe trying to, you know, gain some more knowledge, whether they're land management or hunting in the South. Is there anybody that you follow, Jeff, or a book or show or hunting media that you would suggest someone that they could, you know, benefit from in the South?
Yeah, I'd probably say, you know, it's kind of I don't want to say it's a plug here, but it's really, I don't get many print magazines anymore. I don't, but, you know, Gamekeeper, they put out a quarterly magazine, and it really kind of gears towards the South, Mossio Gamekeepers. And it's a great magazine. And they kind of always got some very knowledgeable people in there that make a lot of sense. And, but as far as, you know, someone on, you know, social media, you know, there's a few of them. Ray Reeves, that's a dude that I spent a lot of time with a couple of weeks ago, and he's from the Northeast. He does a lot of you know, management and very, you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? But he does it in the Midwest and the Northeast, consulting. I don't know why I can't think of that. But he does that, and then he came to the South, and he just kind of really, you know, we got a lot of sweet gums, we got a lot of pines. He just really was giving me some ideas because he hadn't done that a lot in the South, and he's real big on trees and food plots, but he just wants to hold the deer on your farm. You know, a lot of these consultants, you know, are more like, hey, has to like kill them, stuff like that. Ray's more, hey, how do you hold them on the farm? Because he hadn't done a lot in the South, man, we just came up with he came up with some ideas, and we just bounced some stuff off, what had worked and what hadn't worked in places all over. And it really just kind of opened my eyes. But I think the name of his Instagram channel is Genesis Wildlife Products. But Ray Reeves, he's just super passionate, you know, just kind of a land manager, and, you know, always going hard after it. And he's just a guy that I get a lot of info from these days, whether I'm messaging him or, you know, text message or something like, hey, what do I need to do for this? And, you know, here's a good, you know, substitute for fertilizer. It's just one thing after another. It's just stuff that I've never been around because it's more geared toward the Northeast, but I'm anxious to try some of this stuff in the South just because I think it's a little different, little curveball or something that could help us out.
Absolutely. I love that. And I'm going to check out Ray Reeves. That's, you know, that's one of the reasons why I started Southeast Whitetail, not because I know anything more than anybody else, but just because I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot of content that was specific to the South. You know, there's not. Yeah. It's just,
and that's one thing me and Ray was talking about. I said, man, you know, we got a outdoor publication. It's called Georgia Outdoor News, and, you know, there'll be people in there that, you know, every consultant is also a timber management down here. So you know, I work with foresters and timber consultants a lot, and my line of work. But, you know, they're almost like mechanics. You know, there's good ones, and there's a lot of bad ones. All they're thinking about is that almighty dollar, and to me, that's just hard to work both of them, you know, and thinking about cutting those trees, and you know, you got to, or what's best for the wildlife. It does go hand in hand, like we were talking about earlier. But man, to find somebody that's really more deer driven, kind of like the direction I think you're headed, there's just not many people. I can't hardly name any that I'd be able to trust, you know, or recommend. Not in the South.
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, a lot of the people that I follow, whether they're, you know, consultants or just biologists or land managers, that, you know, have a presence on in the media, whether it's a podcast or whatever, it's like, if they're talking about the country in general, if it's a podcast or whatever that's just kind of blanketing the country as far as deer management, I could probably pull maybe 25% of what they say or 10% for what I'm doing on my farm. Now I realize they can't talk about, everything they talk about can't relate to me, but that's another reason why I started this, is because, I mean, you can't cover deer management or wildlife management in blanket the country in general. You just,
No, you can't. You
you,
cannot.
you just can't do that. So, all right, last question. It just kind of goes back. It's doesn't go back. It's about conservation. The 3 points I like to focus on Southeast whitetail is conservation, habitat, and venison. Venison, wild game, all that. What do you feel like it's something that's just a glaring conservation issue in the South that, maybe it's obvious, maybe it's something like turkeys that, people talk about. I had one guest talk about, redfish and red snapper seasons that are just, there's a lot of issues going on there on the Eastern coast with DNR agencies. But what's something you feel like is just should be on people's radars in the South?
Mine's probably the hot button right now. It's just nesting and brood rearing habitat in the South. Growing up, doesn't matter if it was me, my dad, or somebody else's grandpa, or the local farmer. Everybody wants their farm to look pretty. And how does it look pretty? It looks pretty when it's mowed, and that's from the road to the field. And there was just no, native browse, native habitat, no weeds, for lack of a better term. There just wasn't any cover, But that being said, that was no different. I don't think that's 100%, or even 50% the real reason why the turkey population has failed. But that's just one thing, I think it's as much related to the fall of the quail, probably even more so than the turkeys. But that's one thing I've just tried to, just make aware, as much as I can, just let stuff grow up here. There'll be times to the plant, and there'll be times to do things. That's one thing Ray said the other day, just kind of hit home with me. He's like, if you're not going to plant it, don't mow it. And I said, man, that's a good rule of thumb, so that would be mine.
I like that. I what you said really hit home, because when we first got our farm and first got our tractor, man, I'd go up there and just mow. I mean, I would just mow roads, and I would, like you said, as if it was a golf course. Because that's a lot of what you see in media. And I was, and I'm very much liking, like you mentioned, Mossy Oak gamekeepers. They're very big on that, especially this time of year. Fawns are being dropped, got turkey poults out there. And it's not necessarily that you're going to hit them with your tractor, which you can, but just they need that cover from predators. That's spot on.
Yeah, it really is. They do go hand in hand. It's just a miracle, both of those things are happening. Both of those miracles are happening at one time, from the turkeys trying to grow up to the fawns being dropped. It's just they really need real similar cover.
That's right. Corey, you got anything for Jeff? Anything else?
No, man, not that we hadn't already covered. I'm sure I could sit here and, shoot the breeze all day. I mean, it's, again, I really enjoyed it, and, look forward to watching what's coming out. What else you're doing out there, and, it's your farm in Georgia, especially. So, no, man, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you for your time. Like I said, when we first started, I have been looking forward to this interview, because, and I was not kidding. I don't follow. I only follow a certain amount of people guys and girls that I can relate to, and that seem genuine, and they seem like they're doing it for the right reasons, and they seem knowledgeable. And you fit all that. So I appreciate what you're doing. And also appreciate, you representing hunters and land stewards out there, doing it the best way, in my opinion. So thanks for being on. And you got any You got any trips planned this summer, or are you just gearing up for the fall?
Yeah, kind of gearing up for fall. We got to go. It's kind of work related, but we're going to Salt Lake City, Utah next month. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's just anytime I can get in some cooler weather in the summertime, I'm all about that. But then just start gearing up for fall. I've got to.
Yeah.
Every year it gets a little tougher, man, and you guys will see this. The more kids you get or the older they get, it's just harder to leave home. Just for one, trying to be a good dad, and man, just get to mess with them.
And the past 3 years, I went elk hunting once in Idaho and twice in Colorado, and that's how that hunt goes. That's a 8 or 10 day. You're pretty much, I wouldn't say out of pocket, but you got to, at least I did. I had to go make special arrangements to go call or whatever. It's hard to find service. And that was tough, man. I think now I'm probably have to put that on the back burner and do that every couple of years. With my kids getting the age they are, yeah. I mean, I can imagine with your schedule, but yeah, man, that was tough, and I could see that being a real barrier until they start going with me.
Yep, that's why.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the reason why, like what you said about trail cameras, Jeff, earlier. It was like you were describing me, because I have drifted off from them for a lot of reasons, and one of them is just time, because man, I could kill a whole day on trail cameras. There's always one covering the ants, and as opposed to I could spend a whole day on a tractor or doing something productive. And trail cameras are very productive in a way, but that's another reason why I drifted off, is just time management. So Jeff, thank you for being on. I greatly appreciate it. I did want to mention, I know you said your son Cash likes to pull the trigger, likes to shoot. We're going to be doing our Doe Invitational tournament that last weekend in September. We're right there, we're about an hour east of Augusta, Georgia. So in South Carolina, it's not too far away. If y'all want to come, we can. We don't. I will buck hunt a little bit in August, and then we back off until that weekend in September. And it's like they don't know what's going on. I mean, Corey can attest. It's like a war. It's like warfare out there. I mean, there's just guns going off left and right. If you want to bring him, you're more than welcome. We get kids there. We get all kinds of people out there. Joe Hamilton's been out there with us, and we just have fun with it,
Right. Yeah, that sounds good, man. If I'm in town, I'd love to. I think you invited me or something similar like that a couple of years ago, and I was out elk hunting or something. But if the dates worked out, I'd love to. That's not too far from us.
Well, thanks again, Jeff. I got to run. I gotta hit the beach. Start cracking some cold beer, because I got those family photos in a couple of hours, and I gotta get right. I gotta get in the right state of mind.
There you go. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on, and I feel like I've learned something today too. So thanks a lot.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks, Corey, for being on, and thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of the summer.
All right, yeah, y'all too. Thank you.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye-bye.